Most people believe that success brings connection. They assume that as your influence grows, your circle widens. The logic seems obvious. More people around you means more engagement. But they are wrong. The summit is not crowded. If you're watching this as someone who has climbed high enough to feel the air thinning, you already know this. The higher you climb, the fewer the people who stand beside you, the more people want something from you. And the more your own doubts become a liability you cannot show. I call this summit solitude. Contrary to mainstream leadership advice, it isn't a personal failing. The isolation that leaders experience is about how risk and responsibility change the moment you take the top spot. Terms like loneliness of command and CEO loneliness exist for a reason. Esteemed publishing companies have documented it, and executive coaches have made a career out of it. And yet, leaders are told to handle this with the same tools meant to deal with social anxiety. That is the first mistake. This isn't intervention or a failure of networking. Let me break down the four forces that create it. When you hold power, every interaction you have is potentially transactional. Your colleagues, employees, and even old friends now approach you with agendas. Deference replaces honesty, and flattery becomes feedback. Most of all, at this level, vulnerability becomes an existential risk as any information you share can be weaponized. So the walls go up, not because you want them there, but because the environment demands it. At the top, you carry trade-offs that cannot be explained and doubts that cannot be aired. If you share your deepest doubts with your executives, you undermine their confidence. If you share them with the board, you risk your position. If you share it with your family, you burden people who depend on you to be the unshakable mountain, so you carry it alone. Success changes your physics. Your risk tolerance diverges, your time horizon extends, and conversations about everyday struggles begin to feel like you are performing a version of yourself that no longer exists. Meanwhile, others project their own narratives onto you. The assumption is always that your life must be easy. They look at you and say, must be nice, not realizing that they're describing the view, not the oxygen level. High-level leadership leaves no room for maintenance relationships. Between constant availability and the always-on nature of modern command, family time suffers first and old friendships fade next. What's left is a narrowing circle of other high achievers, people who are just as competitive and time-starved as you are. These four forces are not personality flaws. They're the physics of power. Nowhere is this dynamic more exposed than in the phenomenon known as the curse of the competent. Almost every high-level leader has experienced this, but few can name it. When you always become the person who solves the problems and stays calm in a crisis, you stop being a human being to the people around you. They see you as an unshakable mountain that doesn't get weary, does not have doubts, and doesn't need to be asked how it is doing. So they stop asking. Your composure becomes a trap. Since you never show cracks, people assume there are none. People naturally seek shelter from their own chaos under the person who seems most stable, forgetting that the anchor receives no shelter in return. For the most part, this isn't malice, just psychology. The people under your leadership deserve your competence, but competence does not mean that you're immune to the weight of the role. It just means you have learned to carry it without dropping it. And ironically, this is exactly what makes the burden invisible. To understand how deep this problem runs, we have to look at what mainstream leadership advice gets wrong. Harvard Business Review published an article on CEO loneliness. Their solution sounded like the standard self-care. Cut yourself some slack, think it over, build benevolence, and get support from outside. Let me be direct. This advice assumes that the leader has the same freedom as everyone else. It assumes you can cut yourself some slack when a merger is collapsing and your board is watching for weakness. It assumes that you can get support from outside when your vulnerabilities could become tomorrow's headlines. It assumes you can think it over when you have to make a decision that affects thousands of livelihoods with incomplete information. The late industrialist Ratan Tata once captured the reality of this pressure perfectly. He said, "I don't believe in taking the right decisions. I take decisions and then make them right." That is the statement of someone who did not have the luxury of processing emotions before acting. That is the statement of a leader who understands that leadership at the highest level is not about finding a comfortable path. It is about execution under conditions that offer no comfort at all. The isolation is not a failure of willpower, nor a lack of emotional intelligence. The asymmetry of leadership is the design. the architecture of power itself. The question changes from how to eliminate the isolation to how to become psychologically equipped to carry the portion that cannot be removed. The first solution is to know your own psychology better than your competitors know your company. High performers often know their business inside out. They can tell you the margin on every product line and the operational bottlenecks in every division. But ask them, what actually drains you? What kind of stress makes you dangerous to yourself and to others? Where do you secretly look for validation? And most would not be able to answer. Before you optimize operations or make another high-level hire, you need to map your own psychological operating manual. Stop expecting your employees, the public, or even your family to provide emotional feedback they're incapable of providing. Become your own anchor. When you know exactly where your psychological architecture is strong, you can build systems around vulnerabilities rather than be ambushed by them. This is more fundamental than work-life balance. The danger at the top isn't just that you work too much. You begin to believe you are the company. When your identity fuses with your position, every corporate downturn feels like a verdict on your personal worth. Great leaders understand a distinction that most people never learn. The role carries the responsibility while the human carries the role. Think of your position the way an actor thinks of a character. You wear the armor of the title in the boardroom because when the storms hit, they hit the position, not your core humanity. The mental separation isn't cold detachment. Behind the title, you remain someone else, a person with needs, limits, and a life independent of the throne. The armor is real, but you do not sleep in it. I discussed this in a previous video when I talked about designing pre-committed standards, building the system before the storm arrives. Most people make decisions emotionally and rationalize them logically after the fact. Elite leaders should reverse this. You must design your standards before the emotions show up. What circumstances justify layoff? What values are entirely non-negotiable? When do you walk away from a deal? These questions must be answered in calm water, not in the hurricane. In a crisis, your brain is simply trying to survive. If you built your framework in advance, you aren't inventing morality amidst chaos. You are simply executing a decision you already approved when the sun was shining. This is one of the most psychologically expensive and unnecessary burdens leaders carry. Many leaders waste enormous energy trying to explain themselves, whether to employees who do not have the full picture, to the media who has no interest in accuracy, or even to friends and family who operate in a completely different world of risk and consequence. Here's the difficult truth: you will be misunderstood. Your responsibility is not universal approval, nor is it making sure that everyone is comfortable with your decisions. Your job is making the best decision with incomplete information and then executing it. The moment you release the need to be understood, you reclaim massive psychological territory. You stop performing, stop justifying, and finally free your cognitive energy for what actually matters: the integrity of your execution. Pressure never disappears. If you do not intentionally design a release mechanism, it will release itself destructively. It will leak into anger, poor decisions, and collateral damage in your personal life. Every elite performer needs a deliberate system to vent accumulated stress. The form doesn't matter, but the function does. Go sailing, go lift weights, go flying, right? You just need a space where no one needs anything from you for a defined period. Schedule this release with the same seriousness that you would bring to a board meeting, because an overheated engine doesn't perform. Everyone talks about protecting time, but almost no one talks about protecting thinking. The highest paid leaders are not paid for effort or hours. They are paid for judgment, for the quality of a small handful of decisions that determine the fate of everything else. Every unnecessary meeting, pointless email, and minor problem escalated by a dependent team steal from that judgment. It drains your cognitive bandwidth, your finite daily capacity for clear strategic thought. Clear thinking cannot be replenished on demand, so protect it ruthlessly. Many leaders accidentally become everyone's solution. Employees stop thinking because you will provide the answer. Executives stop deciding because you will make the call. Eventually, the entire organization depends on one person. That isn't leadership. Your goal is to build capacity, not dependence. And this is where the parallel between business and family becomes critical. When you constantly rescue people, you rob them of the very thing that built you, the necessity of solving their own problems. Sometimes the highest form of support is stepping back so others can grow strong enough to stand. As I mentioned earlier, most corporate advice focuses on trying to cure leadership loneliness. The goal is not to eliminate solitude, it's to understand it. Leadership is lonely because information, risk, and responsibility only flow one way. You simply cannot distribute the full weight of certain choices without compromising the position itself. This is what separates the leader who's crushed by the weight from the leader who learns to carry it. They aren't strong in some abstract heroic sense. They know exactly what they can offload, what they must build systems to handle, and what must remain theirs alone. And to those leaders watching this right now, feeling the sheer weight of everyone's expectations, I want to say something to you directly. You are the strategist, the decision maker, and the one carrying 1,000 dependencies on your back. People look at your titles, success, and composure and assume that you're self-sustaining. They see you as a mountain and come to you for shelter from their own storms. But mountains get weary too. You are surrounded by people, yet none of them truly see you. They see the role, they see your strength, what you provide, but they don't see the cost of it. You do not have to carry the sky on your shoulders all the time. It is okay for you to remove the armor, take a step back, and breathe. The world will not collapse if you take a moment to care for yourself. If your organization or family cannot survive a few hours without you, that is not loyalty. The people who belong in your inner circle aren't the ones climbing you for the view. They're the ones that are standing right beside you, who understand the gravity of what you carry, and who remind you that you are allowed to rest. Here's the final verdict of the mirror. The summit is empty by design. The air thinning is not a malfunction, it's the altitude. Your goal shouldn't be trying to make the summit feel like sea level. It is building the psychological infrastructure to breathe at the level you have chosen to occupy. In my next video, I will dissect the mechanism that builds a glass wall around every leader. I call it the transactional tax of power. The way sycophants contaminate every relationship until isolation becomes your only defense. Because even the strongest anchors need a safe harbor, and you do not have to navigate the storm entirely alone. I will see you then.